Welcome to another episode of Project Geekology, and I hope all of y'all have your web slingers on. Oh wait, no, it's organic. I don't know how I produce these webs, but you know what? We're just here for the ride. I am one half of your host, Anthony, and joining me this week, as always, is...
Dakota. So Anthony, wait, your web slingers are organic?
Yeah, man.
Does it only come out of your wrist, or...?
It comes out of my wrist. I don't know how my body produces it.
Me neither, and I don't want to know. Okay, so we are covering Spider-Man 2 today, the second film in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. It's widely considered one of, if not the greatest superhero movie of all time, and throughout the entirety of rewatching it, I was thinking, how the heck did this happen? It's such a beautiful movie. It's so perfect. There's very few little things that are wrong with it, but we're going to get into all that and more later in this episode of Project Geekology. First, I want to ask you, Anthony, what have you been up to? I haven't spoken to you for about 2 weeks now.
Right. Well, since then, we've gotten the last episode of The Last of Us, and so we've got the first season completed. And
oh man, I'm late on that. I've only watched the first 3 episodes. So have you finished it?
Yes, I did. And so this whole first season covered the whole first game, right?
Yeah.
So I'm reading online that for the second game, they're gonna cover it over more than one season. So we'll see how that works. But they've already teased one of the characters for the next season, a pretty controversial character because of some things that happen.
No spoilers, Anthony.
No, yeah, absolutely not. Even though the spoilers have been out for 2 years.
Right, of course. But how did you like the first season?
I really liked the first season. I mean, there's some things that they didn't do much of, which was a lot of fighting against the zombies or the infected. But
right, this was more of a strict storyline.
Right. But when you think about The Last of Us, I really just never saw it as a zombie story. It's more the apocalypse is more of a backdrop for something bigger than the apocalypse itself. And okay. I think that's something that some people are missing. I mean, yeah, sure, in the video game there's a lot of you're taking out infected, but you're not sitting in front of a screen, playing a video game. So there's a lot of that's going to be removed. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think that this was a fantastic adaptation, and I can't wait to see what they do next. I mean, your boy Pedro, this man is on some of the biggest TV shows out there, and he's killing it.
He's got some serious star power right now, and he's playing basically the same roles in 2 different series. It's pretty amazing.
I know. Yeah, there's a lot of memes going around showing Grogu and Ellie. It's just just a dad hanging out with his kids.
Pedro's such a great actor, and it's a joy to see, his career just blow up.
He's been in the industry for a while.
Right, I know.
I mean, he was in... I didn't know this because I hadn't really seen the show, but he was in stuff like Buffy, way back when.
I saw a clip of that the other day.
I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's been in the industry for a while now. So it's really good to see that he's getting his time in a spotlight. My first exposure to him was through Game of Thrones.
Right. Yeah, he was pretty big in that.
So it was cool.
His time as the Mandalorian and as Joel within The Last of Us has really, put his work in Game of Thrones into the rearview mirror at this point. Nobody really considers him a Game of Thrones actor anymore.
Right.
Just because his other roles are eclipsing it now. But anyway, speaking of Mandalorian's also streaming right now. Have you been watching that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm all caught up on that. So I've been really enjoying that. I know that a lot of people are kind of complaining about this season because it really hasn't found itself yet, but I have my faith in Filoni and Favreau. I know that it's going to line up to be something good.
Yeah, it almost seems like they're setting up the other shows. Because, we have Skeleton Crew that's coming out. We have Ahsoka. And it almost seems like... I don't know if you're caught up with the last episode?
Yes.
Where they were on Coruscant. And yeah, so they had a couple, without getting too spoilery, they had a couple characters from Moff Gideon's rogue batch of Imperials who are now being rehabilitated into the amnesty program so that they can live a life within the New Republic instead of being deemed criminals. So I kind of have a feeling that was meant to be in, Rangers of the New Republic. I feel like that was like part of that scrapped show, but like the storylines still exist kind of, and they're just branching that into Mandalorian. So we have Ahsoka that's probably going to be bridged pretty soon. We also have Skeleton Crew, which apparently like the Pirate King in the first episode, Pirate King Gorian Shard, he's going to be a main character of, or maybe, I don't know about a main character, but he's going to be a recurring character in Skeleton Crew. And I'm assuming the Coruscant stuff that we got with episode 3 is most likely being retrofitted from the now scrapped Rangers of the New Republic into Mando Season 3. So I don't know, it's kind of like an interesting show right now. It has a lot on its shoulders, but I think that, I like everything that I've been seeing so far.
Right, it's really nice to see Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan again.
Yeah, she's really shining this season.
Yeah. Well, this past weekend I watched through the Riddick movies, the like Pitch Black, Chronicles of Riddick, and just Riddick. So I watched all of them, and Katie Sackhoff is in the last one. And I was like, man, she like really plays these hard space soldiers like really well. She was
also in Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
as Starbuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does a really good job with that too. That's what I know her from.
Same.
So
yeah, just been keeping up with all that. Last of Us, Mandalorian, and you know me, man, always gaming.
Always gaming. Got a game.
Always, man. I'm playing through The Last of Us Part 2. Again, it's been a while. I played through the first one like 3 times, so this is my second playthrough of The Last of Us since it came out back in 2020, so it's cool to kind of brush up on that. And yeah, man, them games are so sad, bro. But yeah, enough about me, man. What have you been up to?
Well, as I said, I'm a little late on Last of Us, but I am caught up with Mando. I have been watching The Bad Batch, which I don't know if did you ever watch the first season of Bad Batch?
I did.
You did? Have you started the second season?
I haven't, man. I'm behind on that, but I really enjoyed the first season. It kind of scratched the itch of like more Clone Wars content, but it was bridging into Rebels.
Yeah, it's interesting. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but like season 2 is some of the best original Star Wars content I've seen in a long. As much as I love Mando, the Bad Batch lately has been outshining it every single week, or almost every single week. But it's just such a strong season. So if you guys haven't checked out the Bad Batch and you feel that perhaps the first season is a bit of a slog, which it really isn't that bad. The first season is not bad. It's actually a pretty decent show. The second season is even better somehow. I don't know how they're doing it, but it's some of the best Star Wars I've seen in a long time.
It's really cool that they produce content like that in animation form, like just really strong content. Mm-hmm. I would say I really enjoyed something that really like surprised, and we talked a little bit about it, was Andor. Because Andor really wasn't something that a lot of people asked for, but it ended up being just like it was a gem that nobody expected,
Oh man, Andor is like probably the best produced single Star Wars thing, just in terms of like telling the story it was trying to tell, and the stakes that it like produced. Oh man, it's so good. And we spoke about Rogue One in the past. This Andor genuinely like bridges the Rogue One gap and like the Star Wars Rebels time period so well. But anyway, I think we're getting on like a Star Wars tangent a little bit here. We're just kind of excited about like what's coming out right now. But I think,
which is all good. We're still on our what we've been up to.
We're still catching up.
All right, you know what? That's it. We were gonna do Spider-Man 2, but we're just gonna do Star Wars.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with Mando Season 3, Episode 1, The Apostate. No, I'm kidding here, but no, I will say Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett were not bad. Well, I would say Book of Boba Fett was bad, on the bad side. But Obi-Wan Kenobi was not great. It wasn't as good as everyone wanted it to be. But seeing really good Mando and really good Bad Batch and Andor, of course, has been a huge like boost to like my love of Star Wars again. So I'm a happy camper currently. I just can't wait for more. Speaking of gaming, I think I spoke about it last week. I started playing the Avatar, Last Airbender.
Gotcha game.
It's a gacha game that just came out, I think, last month, called Avatar Generations. I'm actually really good, you know, like I'm like within the top 100.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I am.
Like without dropping money
currently,
into it?
No, I don't drop money, but I do drop time. That's the problem with gacha games. Like, you can continue just grinding, and it's the most frustrating thing. But it's also super rewarding, and I think it scratches an itch for me that, like, I realize that I need to quit it before I get addicted, and I think I've already become addicted. So anyway, I'm really good. I got some fun characters to play with. Yeah. I think that's that's all I got to say about it for now. But anyway, let's dive into Spider-Man 2, shall we?
Let's do it. No, let's swing into Spider-Man 2.
Oh my goodness, with our non-web-slinged attached hands, because, you know, it comes out.
See, I didn't have to build
naturally.
my own, you know? It just happened.
It just happened, and you happen to have, like, the special 2-finger button with it, like, just built into your skin. It's so weird when you actually think about, like, the mechanics of how that work, but hey, it is what it is.
Maybe just flex the muscle, you know?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
This Spider-Man movie is regarded as the best of the trilogy.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
By a long shot, and a lot of people consider it the best or one of the best superhero movies of all time. It's kind of like a perfect genre film from beginning to end, and it kind of perfectly encapsulates why we love the character of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But this is more of a Peter Parker film, even though Spider-Man is the title character. You know,
yes.
It's about finding the balance between Peter Parker and Spider-Man, because, you know, the classic role of Spider-Man. I read a book last year called All of the Marvels, where
I remember some
guy, oh goodness, I forget his name, but he owns a comic book shop. He spent the time to actually read every single Marvel comic book within the 616 universe from all the way back in the 60s to now, and he had a whole chapter dedicated to Spider-Man, and he called it Spinning in Circles, because the Spider-Man story is very cyclical. You know, he starts out as this kid with nothing. He gets bullied, he gets powers, he finds a mentor figure because his Uncle Ben dies, and that mentor figure ends up, you know, becoming some evil crazed scientist guy or lizard or Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus. It's all of these characters basically fall into that, like, hole that he's trying to fill with the death of Uncle Ben, and eventually they let him down, and it's a cycle of letdown that Spider-Man and Peter Parker always has to go through. He can never really truly get the girl. He can never truly find happiness, but you keep rooting for him because it's the most heartwarming story and character within the Marvel mythos. You know, it's so powerful the way that he, like, broke it down, and we totally see that play out in Spider-Man 2. You know, it's a film about Peter. He can't find the balance in his life, and he continues to make all the wrong decisions, and even the right decisions that he makes, he eventually has to walk back on, because he can't have his cake and eat it too. You know, he can't be Spider-Man and also have a happy life with family and friends, you know?
Right, yeah, with just something as simple as, like, a part-time job, going to school, which, when you think about it, like, having a job and going to school is already, like, a tough thing. But, like, having this whole superhero persona on top of that, just, I just don't know. Like, it would have to be, like, you'd have to drop one of those.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so frustrating because we're not gonna go like scene by scene for this breakdown, because I'm sure you've all seen it a bunch of times. We're gonna go over like just a overall overview of the film, and get onto like the major themes and everything. But
I think that's what we do now.
I think that's what we do. I think that's our thing, bro. Anyway,
It's better.
it is better. We get to cover more, and it's not so like focused in on like every single scene, and I like it better. But Peter does decide that he's going to give up on Spider-Man for a good portion of this movie, and he finds some, quick success in the Peter Parker side of things. He's starting to do better at school. He's able to now go to Mary Jane's play. He's able to help his aunt with her move. He's able to do a whole bunch of stuff that he was never able to do as he could with being Spider-Man,
Right. And which, I mean, obviously it's a comic book movie, and so I just found it insane because he's kind of going through that identity crisis where like he starts losing his power. I could understand like maybe the webs like kind of going off and maybe the climbing, but I just don't think that like his complete physique would just die down like that either.
That is like the hardest to believe, besides the obvious superhero stuff and everything. But like the fact that his whole body just forgets that he has super strength for a little bit. Like there's a point where he tries to like break down a door with his shoulder, and he no longer has that ability. It's almost like Superman with kryptonite, like he just becomes a normal man.
Right. Yeah. So that was an odd thing for me. I can see, because like when you're kind of in a weird place mentally, there is like a chemical reaction happening up there. I can see his body maybe having a hard time producing the web fluids because of that mental block, or maybe even his body just having a weird reaction and him having a hard time climbing the walls. Like I could, like, that stuff was believable to me, but yeah, the super strength, I was like, dude, your body just, that won't go away. And then
right,
like
that doesn't go away overnight.
And then like his like eyes, all of a sudden him needing glasses. I could see the Spidey sense messing up though.
Yeah, the Spider-Man stuff I can see going away with a mental block. If you really truly did not want to be Spider-Man for a little bit, or you were just lost in who you actually are, I could see some of that, like you said, the Spidey sense, the spider webs, and the climbing of walls ability being, you start like missing some of that. But the rest of the physical attributes that he lost in like becoming Peter Parker again doesn't seem realistic. But anyway, that's like probably one of the only minor issues I have with the entire movie, but it is an interesting point to bring up.
Yes. It's not without its flaws, but at the end of the day, it's really nice watching a comic book movie that's a comic book movie. I love the MCU, but a lot of it tries to ground itself in reality, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously there's going to be the stuff that's not real, but it tries to be like how society would really be if there were superheroes around. And Spider-Man feels like a comic book movie, a lot of the MCU is action movies, action movies that have inspiration or characters that are pulled from the comic book universe, but it's almost like reality. Yeah.
What's interesting and it's interesting you bring that up, is what I love about Sam Raimi's style of directing a superhero film, and this also falls into his work with Doctor Strange too. He really understands how to visualize a city, not just from like the web slinging aspects, but the actual people that inhabit it are real life people in this world that he's creating. Like the shopkeepers, or like the accountants in the rooms when Dr. Octopus breaks through as he's crawling across the wall, they freak out, they have their little moment. The one guy in the beginning when Spider-Man or Peter Parker goes with the pizza into the alleyway and comes out as Spider-Man, and that one guy is just like, whoa, that guy stole his pizza. And truly one of the funniest lines in the entirety of superhero movies, easy. But because you could see that, like, if you were a real person, like, there's no way that scrawny guy who went into the alleyway is the same as Spider-Man. So that it's freaking hilarious. So There's little moments like that in this movie that are just, it makes the city feel real, you know, like when he's in the train and all the people are like surrounding him and like bringing him down gently, and they're all like, they're all taking sides with him, and the kids bring the mask. All these people are real in this universe, and it's so cool to see. But like a lot of times I find this happens more often than not in the MCU. There isn't a lot of like interactions like that. There are a few like standout ones that I can think of, but overall most of the like background characters don't really have any meaningful screen time, like Sam Raimi puts the extras in his film too. So I don't know, it's an interesting
it is. You do bring up a good point, because Spider-Man, like his tagline is, you know, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And so you can't call yourself that if you're not
part of a neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have those interactions with the people around you, and I really, there was a moment in the first movie that we didn't even talk about, where, and I know I'm jumping back to the first one.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, go ahead.
But during the last fight that Spider-Man has with the Green Goblin over by the bridge, you have like the people on the bridge like throwing stuff at the Green Goblin, and they're like, "Oh, if you're messing with one of us, you're messing with all of us," you know. And it's like,
you would never see that in an MCU movie today.
Never. And it's moments like that in these movies that I really do enjoy. But I absolutely loved that train scene, you know. I mean, the fight was awesome, the interaction with the people, and the fact that they were like, you know, don't worry, you know, we're not going to tell your secret, even though they don't know who the heck he is. they wouldn't know his name.
Yeah. What's so great about that too is that scene can't exist today, because nowadays everybody would have their phones out, you know, like there's no possible way.
You're right.
Peter Parker could have survived that incident, you know, without being unearthed as Spider-Man.
Yeah, you'd see like a TikTok with like Spider-Man unmasked, and you know, obviously it'd be like, oh, you know, and it, with all like the facial recognition stuff, like, oh, that's Peter Parker, or somebody's gonna know who he is.
Actually, speaking of that, there's a very similar, I mean, it's not very similar, but there's a similar-ish scene where in Shang-Chi, when he's fighting in the bus, and there's that guy live streaming all of his like fighting moves to his, which is actually a really funny scene. And that's one of the standout scenes.
Yes.
That's one of the standout scenes where like you have people around you interacting with you, but again, like that's not gonna happen. That can't happen with Peter Parker's like face out, you know. So
you know, somebody would be live streaming a train battle
for sure. Nobody. The problem is we live in a world of clout. You know, everybody wants the internet clout. Everyone wants the footage that like goes viral. So there's no way, even if this guy saved your life, that you wouldn't like, you know, blast that on Twitter or post a video on TikTok or YouTube, whatever. So it's just kind of like it's a lovely time capsule for, you know, a time that wasn't that long ago. This was 20 years ago, but it's a great scene that can't happen today, unfortunately, unless
pre-iPhone,
it's
man.
I know, pre-iPhone.
Yeah, the pre-smartphone days. And so, you know, we had talked about some of the actors, obviously, in the first film. They come back into this one, but man, Alfred Molina as
he
Otto.
steals the cake. He steals the show in this one.
He's really good.
I love him in almost every role, but this is,
it was great to see
the
him
standout role
in No Way Home. Like, it was so good to see him.
Oh yeah. This is probably one of my favorite roles of Alfred Molina. I'm thinking about his career a little bit. I know he was briefly in the first indie movie.
Oh yeah, he was.
Yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff. He believe it or not, he was the father in the Frozen movies.
Oh, he voiced that?
Yeah.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah, so he's been around. And actually, speaking of Alfred Molina and Frozen, the director of Frozen, Jennifer Lee, ended up marrying Alfred Molina recently during COVID, I think.
Oh,
so
really?
They clearly met through those films, and hopefully he's living a happy life.
He's just really good. He played a really good Otto Octavius, and then when he went into Dr. Octopus mode, the struggle that he had between his own way of thinking and the arms controlling his mind, he did that really well.
Yeah, there's one scene that I love every time. Well, I mean, there's so many great shots in this movie. You can pause it pretty much anywhere in the film, and it's just like, wow, this looks great. But there's a great camera movement where he's in the abandoned pier where he starts building the other things, and then he starts to realize there's voices in his head, and he turns around for the camera and like touches the back of his neck where that inhibitor chip is, and the camera zooms in on it, and then it zooms back out as he turns back around. It's a cool shot. Like, it's just creativity with cameras that is just like, you know, it's existent today, but they were going like all out with this and having fun. You could tell this was fun to make.
And that scene goes to show that the arms didn't really completely take control of his mind. Like, he had an awareness. He was like, oh crap, that thing's gone. That's why I'm hearing this stuff. This is why I'm probably doing some of this stuff.
I think over time, the arms had a stronger pull with him. And that's why at the end, when, you know, he's just like, listen to me now.
Right. He had like a strong resolve in that moment. I think he just didn't. I think at that point, when he was being controlled, he was kind of beat down. He had just lost his wife. He became pretty much like a laughingstock because, you know, this thing that he was trying to build, this thing that he threw his life into, pretty like the pre-arc reactor, just didn't work.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of like the whole idea of like renewable energy through fusion, so I don't claim to know a lot about nuclear energy and stuff like that, but right now, you know, since nuclear power has been a thing, we've really only been able to harness nuclear fission, which is like by capturing the decay of, you know, decaying objects basically, and that we've been able to capture that energy off of that. But nuclear fusion is what like the sun creates. And it's renewable. It injects a certain amount of energy and gets more energy output out, and it's kind of like the perfect way to build energy. And actually, they recently, within the past couple months, in the real world, have created a way for fusion to start being produced. And, you know, that's something that like was always like in the realm of science fiction. So it's kind of cool seeing, and when that was happening, I saw a whole bunch of memes of like, this is not going to go well, because like it's a whole bunch of like Dr. Octopus memes of like, it's contained.
We're gonna get a Dr. Octopus out of this.
What's crazy to me though, like, and rewatching it as an adult and, you know, with like a more rational mindset, did he not test this before he had like this huge demonstration?
Right, like simulations, like on computer, right? Before you would actually go for the full thing. I'm assuming that if you had the capability of creating fusion, renewable energy through fusion, you have a way to be able to actually test your calculations through a simulation of some sort or some type. And even Peter Parker, you know, was bringing that stuff up. He's like, are you sure your calculations are correct? The man was so sure of himself. But, you know, then we get to that point where he's like, man, Peter was right.
I wonder if it was just him and not a room full of people who got in the way and, you know, around all that metallic objects that got like sucked into it. I wonder if he could have stabilized it. I think the answer from the movie is that he couldn't, but that's because there was so much going on in that room at that time where he kept like turning around like, don't worry, you know, his focus wasn't purely on that. So I wonder if he could have, but I guess I don't know. It's one of those things we'll never know. But
right.
Another thing, like the arms, like, was that the first time he ever tried putting those arms on? Because he had like, it clearly injected sensors into his spine so that he would be able to control that. But like, he didn't have any like marks on his back before that point. So I'm assuming this is the first time.
I believe it was his first time because the way that he explained the arms wasn't in a way of, you know, don't worry, I've tried them on before. This inhibitor chip is going to protect me from that. And I've, you know, he didn't speak in a way that he was like, oh, yeah, I've done this before. No, I'm pretty sure that was his first time wearing that. That was his first time booting up that machine, too, and putting in those calculations.
Crazy. Absolutely nuts. But one thing that I really love about this movie, and there's so many things I really love about this movie, is the creativity when it comes to the fight scenes. We spoke a little bit about like the subway or, you know, the train fight scene where we spoke about what happens after the train fight scene, but like the ability to have this huge sweeping fight on a moving train isn't something new to Hollywood. You know, we always, you know, would see that in like westerns and stuff. But this was really, you know, big and next level because they could like go onto the side of the trains. They could fight within the trains. He had to stop the trains with his hands. It was just really creative. And you could tell that they like put thought into like, how do we make this an interesting fight sequence?
Right.
And also like a saving sequence. So they did all that. But one thing I don't think we see enough of in superhero movies is vertical fight scenes where like you have two characters that can climb walls and there are several different fights that happen vertically. And it's just interesting to watch, you know, it's something creative. You know, you have stuff falling that you have to like try to like pick up or save to like throw at the enemy or, you know.
Right. And you get that in here, you know, when they're fighting on the side of that building with the clock on it.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's something that we don't get a lot of in superhero films in general, but like vertical fights are really cool, especially like when it's characters that can't fly, you know? So I guess you can't really do too much of that with characters who can't climb walls, but we got a little bit of that actually, you know, speaking of which, Shang-Chi, there's that scene where they fight on the scaffolding of that one building. That was a really cool fight scene.
Oh, that was a really cool fight scene, yeah. That brought me some Rush Hour moments, like it brought that back to me.
Yeah.
You're right. And, you know, as much as I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, I'm really hoping that his next Spider-Man movie kind of brings some of these Sam Raimi Spider-Man moments. I want to see fights like in these movies within the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. We're not really getting much of that. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, dodging and stuff and some web action and some hand-to-hand stuff, but I mean, the fight scenes in this one was just really good. There was a lot of like Spider-Man dodging, very like close calls, you know, kind of just like jumping, a lot of webbing. There's just, I felt like Spider-Man in these movies, within his fights, he was using a lot of what he had, you know, the wall climbing, his ability to sense the attacks coming towards him, and his webbing. Whereas with like Tom Holland, it was kind of like maybe like one or the other or a couple at the same time. Like some of the fights aren't on a grander scale as like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, and sometimes the fights actually are on a grander scale, because there was the one fight in Far From Home where the Mysterio has like the whole city like overrun by drones and he's creating that huge elemental monster thing. And it's a huge fight, but you don't get the sense of scale and intimacy that you do in the Sam Raimi fights that make it a grandiose epic between two giants, you know, like fighting in a ring. It's really just something that Sam Raimi pulls through like his camera work. And
maybe it's because Tom Holland seems to be fighting a lot of beings that are like way bigger than him. And in these Sam Raimi movies, a lot of these beings are the same size as Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. You have Green Goblin, human-sized. You have Dr. Octopus, human-sized, but he has the arms. And the third one, you starts to scale up a little bit, but you still have some human-sized elements to it, and I'm really interested to see where they go next. I do see that there's a lot of potential, but don't get me wrong, I do like Tom Holland. I think he does a great job. He's a really good Peter Parker and a Spider-Man, and it really makes sense. He looks like a high school kid. He looked the part, whereas Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield looked a little older.
Kirsten Dunst had a far bigger role in this one as like a character that Peter was always trying to like chase after, in a way, like he knew that he loved her and she knew that he loved him, but he was always skirting around that. And finally, when he had that identity crisis, he was in a position to do something about it, but she had already moved on, so to speak, to another guy. And it happened to be J. Jonah Jameson's son, the astronaut,
right?
John Jameson. And I kind of love the dance these two do around each other, because they're just, a waltz that they never really meet within the dance floor until the very end, obviously. But like they keep going around each other, like I'm available now, but I'm not. I'm available now, but I'm not. You know, it's kind of, it's sad, it's depressing, and you want it to work for both characters because you like both characters, but you also feel bad for Mary Jane because this guy clearly doesn't want to tell her his secret and is just, you know, just skirting around all these issues with their relationship.
In the first film, he was kind of still like chasing her. He didn't really seem to be on her radar too much as he does in this film. She was more into Spider-Man in that first one. She was like, oh, you know, he's always kind of around. And so she was kind of interested in that, in Spider-Man. And in this one, she obviously has feelings for Peter Parker. There's been development between the first and this film. And so it's obvious that she has feelings, and she knows, you know, like she knows, and he sees it, that she's putting herself out there also, like, hey, you know, I'm interested. And he's like dying on the inside. He's killing himself on the inside. He's like, oh, I just can't because I don't want you to get hurt.
You know what's so funny? Speaking of this, I don't want to forget this, because when I said it out loud to Jen when we were watching it last night, at the end of the movie, he's just like, I'm Spider-Man and I will always have my enemies. And I'm thinking to myself, in the past like 2 years that you've been Spider-Man, you've had exactly 2 enemies. Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Like, this... He acts like he has this huge bevy of enemies behind him that are always trying to figure out who he is. But really, it was Norman Osborn who's dead, and this guy who just killed himself. So what are you waiting for?
He's waiting for the next one.
Harry Osborn. Harry Osborn is now the next guy that's his enemy. But
for a lot of the film, you know, he doesn't know that it's Peter.
Right, yeah. But I just found that hilarious. Like, thinking about, like, Peter Parker worried about his enemies finding out who he is, when he, you know, canonically from the first, like, 2 movies only had 2 enemies. So I don't know, it's
right. He hadn't developed anything. I guess like the way that he could say that is that it potentially puts her in danger for anything in the future, really.
Sure, and there are dangers in the future that he needs to account for, even though he can't see into the future beyond like his brief Spidey set stuff. But
and it's funny is the fact that they're not together and she's still in danger.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, there was really no...
She gets kidnapped by Dr. Octopus still anyway.
And they aren't even together, yeah.
They're not together, so it's like, I mean, honestly, at this point, you might as well, because she's going to be in danger anyway. As, you know, we'll talk about the next movie, but I just thought it was funny that, now the thing about it, it's just like, yeah, I mean, he's worried about the enemies. Well, guess what? He has enemies that doesn't know his identity or her connection to him, and she's still getting into trouble in all the movies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just by like proximity to Peter Parker that she's just in clear danger. You know, It's not even just Spider-Man at that point.
It's like, why are all these wackos coming after me? I mean, there's like, she'd only have like 2 people to base off of that's close to her in her life. That would be Harry and Peter.
True. Yeah. That's a good point. So I ended up watching, it was called Spider-Man 2.1, which is like the Spider-Man Extended Edition, or Spider-Man 2 Extended Edition, and it added not a whole lot, but there was some clear like short scenes that weren't in the original cut that I don't think I've ever seen before. Like, some of them I have seen from just being online. So it's I had to rent it on Amazon Prime Video.
Okay, because I
right
did not see no Spider-Man 2.1.
So it's not called Spider-Man 2.1 on Amazon Prime Video. It's called Spider-Man 2 Extended Edition. And the title screen, when it, you know, like when the title music is playing, it says Spider-Man 2.1 instead of Extended Edition. So it's kind of confusing, but there's some fun scenes in it. Like there's a scene where J. Jonah Jameson is in his office and he is like parading around in the Spider-Man suit.
Oh my.
You know, like he has a cigar in his mouth, but he's trying to like he's mimicking Spider-Man poses. It's really good.
Dude, I gotta see that.
You gotta find that online. It's super good. But otherwise, there were other scenes that, you know, whenever there was a talking sequence, whenever there was an interaction between two characters, there was, you know, there were longer versions of it. Like the pizza time, there was a longer version of pizza time. There was a longer version of him in the elevator with that one guy. There was some extra scenes with Mary Jane Watson's friend who's in the play that wasn't in the theatrical release. Just little stuff. Nothing really changed the movie for me at all. I don't know that I would necessarily need to watch it again. I don't think it's necessarily the definitive version of the movie, but it was fun for a first time viewing. Like, I mean, obviously I've seen Spider-Man 2 before, but I've never seen Spider-Man 2.1.
Right, I haven't seen that, so I'm interested in going back and watching that. It's funny that you bring that up because I went to, it was like a $5 movie day last year, and they brought back No Way Home, but they brought in the extended edition.
That's right. Yeah.
But they never advertised that it was the extended edition. So I'm sitting there watching a movie. I'm like, oh man, this is great. You know, I'm watching this again. I didn't pay that much. And there was like all these extra, like the first extra scene that hit me, I was like, I don't remember that. I was like, did they add something? And they just kept on hitting with extra scenes, and I'm like, okay, this is like, and then I messaged you. I think I messaged you like right after. I was like, dude, I just watched No Way Home, and there was like a whole bunch of extra stuff. Did they add more? And you're like, oh, that's the extended edition.
Yeah, I knew about that. Actually, I don't think did I see it?
They add like a whole bunch. Like there's like a whole like school news segment with Flash, dude. It was I liked it. It was really good. They added some like really cool stuff, like more interaction between the three Spider-Man and.
That's right. Yeah.
So
I forgot about that.
So yeah, it was really cool. But I still want to check that out. The 2.1.
For sure.
So in this one, Harry finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man because Otto Octavius wanted more tritium because he was recreating his experiment. And so in exchange for more tritium, Harry wanted Spider-Man. That interaction between Harry and Peter was just like, I think that James Franco did really good in that reaction that he had, because he was genuinely surprised, but he looked betrayed at the same time.
Yeah, it's such an interesting. It's one of those like classic, like superhero arch nemesis stuff. Like they did it really well with the Smallville series with Lex Luthor, but this is what like almost like, you know, Shakespearean in like the betrayal aspects of it.
Oh yeah, it felt very Shakespearean.
And it's fun though. Like what I love is his like downfall into craziness. Like at the beginning of the movie, you see him at the birthday party, and you know he's happy to see Peter, but constantly on his mind is like, you know, when are you gonna let me know who Spider-Man is? Are you ever gonna tell me? Blah blah blah. You know, he's constantly nagging him. Then, you know, he has this like high point in the movie where he invites Peter to the fusion test that Doc Ock is gonna do, and you know he's convinced this is gonna make Oscorp more, you know, like rich than it's ever been. It's gonna like put us on the map. And when that goes south, so does his mental state from there. Like he starts drinking heavily, he starts being self-destructive, and he starts going down this path where all he cares about is finding out who Spider-Man is and killing him. So when he gets that opportunity from Doc Ock to like, you know, get Spider-Man, and he sees that it's his best friend, you feel for him, man. You like, obviously he's wrong. Obviously your father wasn't a great dude. Obviously he was a monster, but still knowing that your best friend was the guy who killed your father is tough stuff.
Right, yeah, to his perception, yes.
Yes, to his perception. Peter didn't kill Green Goblin. Green Goblin killed himself, but... Right. Yeah, he blamed Spider-Man.
I do like that scene with J. Jonah Jameson when they were trying to... they were trying to name Dr. Octopus, and like his assistant was like, how about Dr. Octopus? He's like, nah. and then like one of the things he brings up, he's like, Doctor Strange. And he's like, oh, that's good, but it's taken.
What are the chances though? Like seriously, what are the chances that Sam Raimi would go on to direct, like the only other superhero movie he would direct is a Doctor Strange movie? Yeah. Like, what are the chances of that?
Maybe they thought of
super
that.
Cool.
Maybe they thought of like, oh, he brought him up. I don't know. Yeah, that is pretty crazy because Sam Raimi is just really known as horror movies. Like he's got different movies, but one of the biggest things that I think of him is Evil Dead, and I don't know where his like start was, but like all I know is that I feel like
he's best known for his like Evil Dead.
Right.
Well, aside from the Spider-Man movies, the Evil Dead stuff is definitely like his shtick.
Oh, and his boy is in there.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell. Yeah,
well, he's like the main character, like the main guy. But it was really interesting seeing him blend the superhero movie and like his roots into that.
Oh, that scene in the surgeon office where Dr. Octopus is on the operating table and they're trying to cut those arms off, and it just turned into pure horror for like 2 minutes.
It really was like it was like a horror scene.
You have someone like ripping up the vinyl floors with their nails as they get pulled into the shadows. You have some guy with a chainsaw,
like the screaming from it. It's totally one of those hospital massacre scenes in horror movies. So like this actually fit well with what was happening in the film, and like he was able to kind of like toss that in there as like a nod to his other side
of filmmaking, for sure. Oh, you know what? While we still have time, I want to. One thing I forgot to mention is that I watched Shazam: Fury of the Gods recently.
Me too.
It was actually good.
I enjoyed it. Man. I had so much fun watching that movie.
And it reminded me of Spider-Man.
Dude!
It reminded me of the Spider-Man movies because the world was alive.
Comic booky.
Yes.
It's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking that same thing. I was like, dude, this actually kind of makes me miss of how like comic booky some comic book movies can be, and this is it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it, man. Let me tell you, I feel like Zachary Levi genuinely enjoys making these films.
Oh, for sure.
And oh my gosh, like I know that we're talking about like Spider-Man, but I would say that it's relevant in the sense that they're both like very comic book feeling movies.
And they're both made by horror directors. And there was some pretty gruesome like horror moments in Shazam 2. Like when let's not get into that. But there were some like wow, they put this into a PG-13 movie type moments. But anyway, going back, I just wanted to touch on Shazam 2 because a lot of people aren't seeing it. It got not terrible reviews, but it got middling reviews. I think it's sitting in like the 50s on Rotten Tomatoes, and not a lot of people are going out to the theater to see it, but I think more people should give it a shot.
And see, this is actually a perfect example of something that I've talked about. I don't remember if we've talked about it here in the show, but this is one of those many moments where a movie can get completely destroyed on Rotten Tomatoes, but I disagree with them.
Yeah.
There's been, I've had many times where I'm like, okay, well, you guys hated that movie, and I might semi-agree with them, but still enjoy it.
Yeah, I could see their points, but at the end of the day, your personal opinion is what matters when it comes to
exactly right. I was gonna still go see it. I was like, oh, it got kind of low reviews, but I'll just go see it anyway. And I was like, no, this movie was pretty fun. I liked it.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is that there was that video from James Gunn basically saying that they were going to be rebooting the DC films in the future, so this was almost like a dead end movie-wise when it comes to the universe, but I think people should definitely give it a shot. It's definitely a fun Shazam. It's a fun superhero movie. Plain and simple.
Right. I mean, if you like the first one, you'll like this one.
Alright, quickly, let's end our discussion about Spider-Man 2. We mentioned that it is considered one of the greatest superhero movies of all time and considered among the best of the Spider-Man trilogy. Anthony, do you even like this film?
I give it a 1.5. No, I'm just kidding.
A 1.5 out of 1.5, right?
Yes.
Same.
I absolutely enjoy this film, and it was great coming back to it. It had been a little while since I had watched this movie, and dude, I always love going back to the Tobey Maguire movies. But yeah, this one was just so good. It was so on par, and it was exactly what it was trying to be. It was a comic book movie. It was a good blend of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, like, you got a good bit of both. But yeah, a lot of the turmoil was, you know, for Peter Parker. Yeah, dude, double. You know, if I had more thumbs, I'd put him.
Here,
up,
I'm gonna give you 2 thumbs. I'm gonna give you. So we got 4 thumbs up for Spider-Man 2. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here at Project Geekology. We're so happy that you guys have, you know, stuck around with us, and we're grateful to continue talking about Spider-Man. So next podcast, we're gonna be doing Spider-Man 3, the final film in the Sam Raimi trilogy, and who knows where we'll go from there, but we'll let you know when we find out. So thanks again, guys. We hope to see you soon in our next podcast. Find links to our socials in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.